Ethan Ward was a man whose name everyone in the city knew, the billionaire CEO of one of America's biggest tech empires. He wore suits that cost more than most people's yearly salaries and drove cars that could buy entire streets. But behind the wealth and prestige, Ethan had developed a habit, looking down on anyone he believed was beneath him. One late evening, after wrapping up a demanding business meeting, he stopped at a small roadside diner just outside the city. It was one of those quiet, nostalgic places, flickering lights, cracked vinyl booths, and the comforting scent of freshly brewed coffee. Exhausted and slightly irritated, Ethan dropped into a seat by the window. Moments later, a young waitress approached. She looked to be in her early 20s, cheerful, though clearly running on empty. Her uniform was faded, her shoes worn, but her smile was warm and genuine. "Good evening, sir. What can I get for you?" she asked politely. Ethan barely looked up from his phone. "Coffee. Black." She nodded and walked off. When she returned, he noticed a name stitched on her tag, Layla. For some reason, he decided to amuse himself at her expense. "So, Layla," he said with a smirk, deliberately mispronouncing her name, "do you ever give financial advice to billionaires?" She blinked, momentarily thrown off, but kept her composure. "Can't say I have, sir," she replied evenly. "Why do you ask?" Ethan chuckled, swirling his coffee. "Because I am one," he said, leaning back smugly. "Maybe you could teach me how to manage my money. You must be quite the expert working here." He expected a nervous laugh, maybe an apology, but instead, Layla met his gaze and said quietly, "Maybe you should save something money can't buy, sir." Ethan frowned. "Excuse me?" Setting the coffee pot down, she continued calmly. "You have everything money can buy, but you look like you've lost everything that makes life worth living." Her words stopped him cold. No one, not his board, not his so-called friends, had ever dared speak to him like that. "You think I've lost something?" he asked defensively. She shrugged lightly. "Maybe not yet, but people who mock others' struggles usually have something hollow inside. Money can fill your pockets, sir, not your heart." Ethan said nothing. Her words echoed louder than he cared to admit. He wanted to snap back, to dismiss her, but instead he found himself asking, "And what makes you an expert on happiness?" Layla smiled faintly. "Because I've learned to value it. My father used to say, 'Wealth isn't what you have, it's what you can live without.' He passed away last year. He didn't leave me much money, but he left me peace. He taught me to be kind, even when life isn't." Ethan's hand froze around his cup. For the first time in years, he felt small, not in status, but in spirit. He looked at her again, this tired waitress who, without trying, had given him the most honest lesson of his life. "How many jobs do you work?" he asked quietly. "3," she said. "I'm paying for college. I want to be a financial planner one day." He gave a soft, ironic laugh. "That's funny." "Not really," she said simply. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a business card, and slid it across the table. "When you graduate, call me. You got the kind of wisdom my company needs, and maybe my life does too." Layla looked surprised, then smiled gratefully. "Thank you, sir, but I wasn't asking for help." Ethan shook his head. "I know. That's why you deserve it." Months passed. Layla kept working long shifts and studying late into the night. Then one morning, she received a letter, an offer from Ward Industries, a full scholarship and an internship. Ethan never mentioned that diner encounter publicly, but those who worked close to him noticed something change. He began visiting his employees more often, speaking to them like equals, not subordinates. He even launched a new scholarship fund for students from low-income families pursuing business and finance. When one of his executives asked what sparked the change, Ethan only smiled and said, "A waitress once reminded me what real wealth means." Years later, at a grand industry conference, Ethan stood on stage to introduce his new head of finance. Layla, the audience applauded, unaware of the story behind their connection. As she stood beside him, Ethan leaned over and whispered, "You were right that night." She smiled. "About what?" He replied softly, "Money can buy comfort, but never peace.